Can you hear me? Oh, you said you can't hear music. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. I just want to make sure that my audio is all good, and then we will get going. Hey, y'all. Okay. Let's see here. Let me know if you can hear me. You can hear me now. Okay, good. Perfect. Hi. Okay, I'm so excited about this. You know, one of my New Year's resolutions for 2021, I'm kind of starting early, but one of my New Year's resolutions for 2021 is to talk to you guys about different topics around entrepreneurship. So I often will teach and coach about building apps and starting app ideas, but there's all sorts of other stuff you need to know when it comes to building a business and starting a company. And one of those big things that people ask me all the time is like, how do I get funding for this thing? How do I get money to get going? How do I get my startup capital? Sometimes people call it, like, how do I get the money? So that's really what I want to focus on and talk to you guys about today. And I'm so excited to have you here. Let me explain really what's going to happen today, because I just want to drop some knowledge on y'all today. And then for those of you guys who really like what you're learning, I'll give you an opportunity to do more, to learn more of this and to implement some of this for yourself. And I actually have invited, for that second part, I've invited some friends who have been very successful in launching and getting funding for their businesses. I've invited some friends to help us and to learn, to teach us all in part 2. So this is going to be part 1. I'm going to drop a little bit of knowledge on you about my story and what I have personally gone through getting funding for my own businesses. I'm going to break that down for you, and then we can continue going from there. Cool? Okay. So we're talking today about how to get funding for your business idea. And my goal for today is to share with you how I personally raised $300,000 for my first company, right? $300,000 for my first company. There's a question, is this recorded? Yes, this is recorded. So as soon as we're done, if you give it like a couple minutes, you'll be able to watch the video right after, right? Okay, so I want to show you what I did, right? What I personally did to raise money for my first company, but I also want to tell you what I wish I had done, right? Because there's some stuff that I did that I'm like, you should copy this. This worked. And there's some stuff that I didn't do because it wasn't even like an option. I don't want to like make myself sound like that old as an entrepreneur. But when I started in 2014, there were some things that weren't even possible for things you could do now for getting money for your business. So I want to show you, like, okay, if I were doing it again now, this is what I would be doing now, so that you can see multiple perspectives. Cool? Make sense? Okay, good. And then as I mentioned, if you want to dig into this more and you want to actually work on getting funding for your own business and you want to talk to more people who have done this successfully, we can do that in part 2, and that's coming. So for those of you who have not met me, I just want to introduce myself really quickly. Some of you guys, we're buddies. We've talked before. But for other of you guys, you've maybe never read an email from me, or you don't know me or anything like that. So my name is Tara Reed, and I'm a tech entrepreneur. So before becoming an entrepreneur, I used to lead marketing initiatives at Google, Foursquare, and Microsoft. So my background is in technology. However, I was not the person working at those companies like coding the apps or building the apps myself, right? I was working on the business side of those companies. And in 2014, I started a really successful art startup, and I built the app for that startup. It was like an algorithm that matched people to artwork based on their taste. I really like art. I have a cool textile actually right behind me. Can you guys see that? So I really like art and collecting art, and I wanted to help other people do that on a budget. And so I decided to take something that I knew a little bit something about and to start a company around it. So I created this app that matched people to artwork based on their taste. It was called Collecto. And I did that all without writing any code. So the process of coming up with the app idea, of building it without any tech people, of charging people to then become customers, all of that got me $150,000 in revenue in my first year of business. First year of entrepreneurship, $150K. But something that's very relevant to what we're talking about today is not only did I make $150,000 in my first year of entrepreneurship, but I also got $300,000 that I raised from investors and from other people who said, here's a check. We love what you're working on. Here's some money to take what you're doing to the next level, right? So for those of you who are wondering specifically about that, how do you get $300,000 to get started, to get going, to help you grow? How do you do that? That's the part that I want to talk to you about in real detail, right? Because I've got lots of press and publicity about my entrepreneurship. Entrepreneur Magazine featured me in their Young Millionaires edition. Forbes has written some fun articles on how to succeed in Silicon Valley when you don't look like Mark Zuckerberg. And I've also done a really fun TED Talk. But the reality is that when I was starting, it was none of that, right? It wasn't like lots of press, making money, having successful business. That was not how it started, y'all. So when I started, I was working a 9-to-5 job, right? I was working a 9-to-5 job. I happened to be at Microsoft at the time. And I had to figure out a journey for how to get funding for my business over the years, right? Over time. So there are, and if you want to take notes on this, I welcome you to take some notes on what you need to know here, because there are 3 main ways you should be thinking about for getting funding for your business, right? One of the great things about building a business today is that the cost to build a business is not as high as it used to be, right? You don't need, because of the internet, because you can use, relatively cheap software to create a website, right? Create a website, see if anybody signs up, right? You can do that for free or for maybe $50, right? And so because the barrier is so much lower, you don't need that much money to get started. Before I talk to you about the 3 main ways to get funding, can you guys tell me in the chat, just type in the chat and tell me how much funding you think you need to get your business going? Do you need $5,000? Do you need $10,000? Do you need $20,000? Do you need $50,000? Like, what do you think you need to get this thing going, right? Just give me a ballpark. It doesn't have to be a perfect number. I'm just curious to hear. You type in the chat, what do you think you need to help you kind of get this going or get to the next level? How much money do you think you're going to need in funding? Anyone have any ideas? I'll give you a second. Okay, I see 5,000. Nicholas says, I need just some sweat equity. Like, I just need to work on it. 20,000, 10,000, 60,000, 80,000, about 300,000. Great. For everyone, it's going to be totally different, right? It's going to be totally different for everyone. So don't look into the chat and be like, oh, someone said a totally higher or lower number than me. My number must be wrong. It doesn't work that way, right? Danielle says, I don't need any extra money. I just need clients. Right. Right. Okay, good. Got it. So everybody's got a range here. I see $10,000. Casey says $400,000. Yeah, cool. Great. Awesome. And some of you guys, Natasha's like, I'm not really sure how much I need. That's okay. That's okay as well. Okay, good. So given the amount of money that you guys all need, there's really like 3 main ways you should be looking at to get funding. And I want to walk through what each of these are for you and explain them and how they work. And then I will give you like the inside sneak peek on what I personally did. And then I will tell you what I wish I did that wasn't even an option for me that now is an option. Cool. Okay. So the first thing you can do is you can go to a traditional investor, or it could be an accelerator, right? Have anyone ever heard of an accelerator before? You guys know what an accelerator is? An accelerator is just in case you don't know, an accelerator is a program. It usually is like a couple month-long program where usually they will give you some money. They'll give you an investment, right? And then they will help you accelerate your company during that time period, right? So some popular accelerators like the Stanford, Harvard of accelerators. So YC, Y Combinator is the name of one of them. If you want to write that down, Y Combinator is the name of an accelerator. Another one is called Techstars. Techstars is another name of an accelerator. Another name of an accelerator is 500 Startups. Those are like the top 3 that you should know about. Y Combinator, Techstars, and 500 Startups. So what do I mean by traditional investor / accelerator? Well, a traditional investor is an individual person or a company, right? And they will write you a check And in exchange for that check, they want you to give them a percentage of ownership in your company. So you take the money and you give them ownership, right? That is one way to do that, right? That's one way to do this. However, for many of you guys, this may be a tough way to go to start with, right? Let me explain why. One, you may not be ready to give up ownership in your company yet, right? Let me show you, I'll show you the websites for them. Some people are asking, what are you talking about? Can you tell us the names? Yes. So the first one is called Y Combinator. I'm gonna put it up in the screen right now. Y Combinator, do you see this? So Y Combinator has a program and they give you $125,000 for your company. $125,000, right? Let me show you another one. Techstars. I'm gonna pull it up. Techstars.com is another accelerator, and they give you, I think it's like $100,000, and maybe 125 as well. They're all about the same, right? And the last one is called 500 Startups. Right, you can look at accelerators. So what I'm telling you is there are programs out there that you can do where you will get money in exchange for ownership in your company. But there are some pros and cons of this, right? First of all, an investor is not, as Cedric asked, what is the average an investor will lend? When you do number one, traditional investor accelerator, it is not a loan. It is not a loan. They don't want you to pay them back. They want ownership in your company. They want to own some, right? So that's how that first way works, right? Founders give up all sorts of amounts of equity. A really good deal would be you get $100,000 in exchange for like 7 to 10% of your company would be a really good deal. Considered a really good deal. And that's about what you'll see with those accelerators. Now, here's the thing. 2 things. Number one, the accelerator is going to ask you to be already making money before they're going to give you any. So if you have not made any money with your business yet, this is not an option. If you haven't made any money yet, this is not an option. This is only an option if you already have some customers and you already have some traction, right? Now, this was one of the first things actually that I did. This was the second thing that I did. I'll show you this in a second. I'll show you what I did in a moment, right? But that's the first thing you should know. All right, second thing. The second thing that you can do are pitch competitions. Pitch competitions. Now, for me, I found that this was a really good sweet spot for me when I was starting. Why? Because many of the pitch competitions, you win, or even pitch programs, you win free money. And what that means is you don't have to give them any ownership of your company, right? Because the thing is, it's kind of, for many of you guys, it's kind of early to give up ownership of your company, right? You don't even know what you've got yet, right? Like you don't want to give up ownership. You don't even know how big this thing can be. So what I found was that pitch competitions and programs were a lot better for me because I would get grants. Now, what's the difference between a grant and an investment? For an investment, you've got to give them, you get the money, but you've got to give away some ownership of your company. For a grant, you get the money and you don't owe them anything in return. It's free money, right? So for that reason, I found that pitch competitions were really useful for me. And actually, I told you I raised like $300,000. $200,000 of that was from pitch competitions, meaning I didn't have to give them anything back. Right? 100,000 of that was from investment, and the rest of it, the other 200,000, was free money, right? So let me know in the chat, but I bet a lot of you guys would like to have the free money first, and then you can, discuss the other options. So that's a really good second option, right? Now, the third option is the one that wasn't even really an option when I was starting, and I'm gonna actually, I'll tell you about it now, and then I'll show you. So crowdfunding is where you go out to people. Maybe it could be people who are your friends. Maybe it could be your family. Maybe it could be people who are in this chat, right? Like this community of people online. And what you go to them is you say, okay, well, I am working on a company, I need some money. And if you give me some money from the community, right? This is like the people, the way to fund from the people, right? If you give me some money, I will either give you some sort of thing back, or I will give you, a little piece of the company so that you can be, part of it and helping me along the way. Now, long story short, the government, the SEC, Security Exchange Commission is what it's called, has used to say you may not crowdfund, go get money from the community. So you couldn't go get money from your mom or your dad and they have some ownership in your business. It wasn't allowed, right? Now there are crowdfunding platforms, and I'm going to show you some of these platforms so that you can see how this works. So that's just the overview, right? Those are the three main ways. Now I'm going to dig in and show you more details for each of the three ways, but I just wanted to just give you the quick overview first. Make sense thus far? Mark says, so are the pitch competitions sponsored by local government agencies or nonprofits? Sometimes they're nonprofits, sometimes they're for-profits. I'll show you a lot of examples actually, because I did a lot of them, right? Okay, so there's pitch competitions, but there's also crowdfunding, and this is something that I would have done way more of if it were actually an option before. It was not an option in the same way. When I started in 2014, the government said you may not crowdfund for ownership in your company, like get crowdfunded investors, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let me show you some cool stuff. Yeah, Tim says non-accredited investors for crowdfunding. Yes, let me explain what Tim's talking about in the chat. I just want to clarify this before I go into detail. Actually, no, I'm gonna come back to it. So I can show you some visuals. So let me map my personal journey to those three different tactics that I showed you so you can sort of see how I did it, right? So the first thing that I did was what you would consider a pitch competition or a pitch program. Now, at the time when I started, I was living in Detroit. And when I started, there was a competition from this company. Let me see if I can find it. They don't have the same competition anymore. You are going to have to find your own versions of these. But this competition was called Start Garden, right? Start Garden. And there was a ideas competition that they did every month. All right, this was their website. It looks a little bit different now. So what I did was I clicked the apply button on their website and I filled out the information about my idea. And I actually ended up winning. They picked a couple winners every month, I think. So I won that competition and they gave me $5,000. This is like an actual article from 2014. I had to look this up, y'all. From 2014 about my company, and it says Start Garden has a $15 million fund, and they're making these small $5,000 investments in companies, right? This is an article about when I got the money. They wrote an article about my company, right? So that was the very first thing I did. I was like, okay, if I have $5,000, it'll help me just get to the next milestone, to the next thing. And that was the first thing I did. It wasn't like me pitching on the stage. I just filled out the form, like it was a written pitch about my business, right? Let me see if I can find it for you, actually. Hold on. Let me try to Google it. I think this is it. Now I'm going to show you, it definitely wasn't polished. I'm probably going to read this and laugh at myself. But what it says, so this is what I filled out. It says, Collecto, helping people understand the art world and become art collectors. And then I had to fill this out. What's the big idea? I said 70% of today's population has never bought a piece of art. At Collecto, we see this as a huge opportunity for two reasons. 20% of people say that art is more intimidating than buying real estate. People don't know where to start. So I'm explaining the problem, all right? How are you different? Then your closest competitor. How does this idea scale into a big business? Why are you the one to run with this idea? And what would you do with $5,000, right? Those are the questions that I filled out to get my first money, right? Now for this, I didn't trade any equity. It was just free money, all right? So that was the first thing. I found like community programs, community pitch competitions, community startup competitions, and I found this one for $5,000. That was my first thing. Then I went after a bigger pot of money and I applied to 500 startups. Now 500 startups, if you remember, is, so first I did a pitch competition, number 2. And then I went to way number 1, traditional investors or accelerators, right? So let me see if I can show you this. I made a video, like I actually looked this up. This is 2015. You guys are seeing like the real deal of what I did. I made a video and I pitched my idea to the investors, right? To the program. Now, the reason I actually like pitching to programs instead of individual investors is because the program has like a set start and end date. You fill in your application, you know if you got in or not by this date. It's not like investors will often like drag you on and on forever. So I like programs because there's clear dates and expectations set. So legit, here's my video. I'll play like a little piece of this for you. Can you guys hear this?
Hey 500 startups, my name is Tara Reed and I am the founder of Collecto. Collecto is a service that helps people buy affordable art by pairing them with a virtual art advisor. So we're kind of like Share Some Style for affordable art. In the past 6 months, we've done over $20,000 in revenue, and we currently have about 400 people actively working with an art advisor in some capacity.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause that there, right? Olivia literally just asked this, which is how much revenue were you generating when you applied for 500 startups? I literally just said it. So $20,000 and I had like 400 signups. That was where I was when I did that. Cool, make sense? So again, right, you don't have to do this route. I'm just showing you what my route was, right? But then after doing that route, after having investors, I really thought that I didn't want to continue giving ownership of my company, right? I didn't want to continue doing that. So I'm going to ask, when you do pitch competitions, were you worried about your idea being taken? No. In general, I find that a lot of times entrepreneurs get so worried about their idea being taken, but the reality is you can't get no customers if you don't tell everybody your idea. You can't get any investors if you don't tell anyone your idea. So my personal philosophy is to tell as many people as possible, and to not worry about someone. If someone else did something similar, that's not going to stop me. In fact, there's no business in the world where no one's doing something similar. Of course, someone's going to be doing something similar. It's business, right? So I don't really worry about that. I would rather get the check written or get the customer than not tell anyone about it. Okay. So after I did the investor route, I decided I don't want to keep giving people ownership of my company. I don't want to do that. So I want to look at other ways to do this, other more innovative ways. So I started doing more pitch competitions, right? Angela says, do you tell them with an NDA? In general, investors almost never sign an NDA. It's like, it's not even, they'll sort of laugh at you. They don't do it. They won't do it. Remember that they talk to about 100 customers a day, 100 potential investments a day. So they would have a big whole stack. It's like a legal suicide for them to have that many NDAs. So my advice is just tell people, don't worry about it. If someone does do something similar, that shouldn't stop you. Like for some reason, we think in tech, there can only be one of something, but like there's Uber and there's Lyft. They're both doing it and they're both making a lot of money doing it. There's Airbnb and there's HomeAway. They're both doing it and they're both making a lot of money doing it. So even if there was someone else doing something similar, so what? If the only reason that would be bad is if you're playing in such a small market that there could only be one, and that doesn't that you shouldn't even be pursuing a business like that. if there can only be one player. Someone says, what is an NDA? An NDA is a document called a non-disclosure agreement, which means that that person won't tell anyone about your idea, right? The thing about non-disclosure agreements is like you can't even really enforce them unless you have a lot of money and you're able to go to court and enforce it. So like don't even spend a lot of time on it. In fact, when someone asks me for an NDA, I know that they're like a beginner entrepreneur and not that seasoned. Most people don't worry about it at all. Okay, so then I started doing programs, right? I did a fellowship for women entrepreneurs. And I think I won like $25,000 from that doing a pitch competition. And then I found this program where JP Morgan had given money to my local community college, and they had given $300,000 for 3 companies. And I went to the local community college and competed there, right? And then I found another program. Oh, this is the community college one. And then I found another program called Code 2040, which had partnered with Google. This one was specifically for Black entrepreneurs. And I did that program and got another $100,000. So I was literally just finding community programs and these programs where I was getting free money to help me build my business, right? Now, if I were doing it now, so let me back up. I told you that I did the traditional investor route, right? There's lots of creative ways to do this, but the 3 that I walked you through are the main ones. Let me go back to that slide. So I did the traditional investor route. Someone asked me in total, how much did you give away? Probably like 7. I never gave more than 7%, right? How did I find these programs? Google, like literally Google and Twitter. If you are not part of Twitter, go on there. Right? Go find it, right? So George says, so if you're a white guy, is it harder to find money? No, I don't think so. I literally was just trying to play to my strengths. So what I found was I did not do a great job going into the rooms with white guys. So I was like, what other rooms can I go into, right? If you are good at that and you can like do the buddy bro thing, do that. Like play to your strengths is my point. Like if you want the real deal talk, there are all kinds of ways to fund your business and play to your strengths. That's all this is. That's all this is. Did you copyright your concept before sharing? No, I have never, ever, ever copywritten anything in my whole life. I just like, I'm not going to spend the time on it. I would rather go after customers and focus on the real things that are important, right? So literally, let me tell you how I found all these opportunities. I Googled, yeah, Raven is exactly right. Google pitch, competition, and then I put my city name, period. And then also I'm on Twitter because people who are in the like technology industry, Twitter is their favorite social network. So on Twitter, I can see when people are posting things too, right? Cool, okay. All right, so let me tell you about the one last strategy that you can use because we talked about the first 2. I wanna talk to you about the one last one because this crowdfunding one is something that is new. And if I were doing this all over again, like this is where the hot spot is right now, all right? This is the hot spot right here. Have any of you guys ever heard of a woman named Dawn Dixon? Let me know in the chat. Have you ever heard of Dawn Dixon? Dawn Dixon. And someone says, what hashtags did you search? I wasn't really looking up hashtags. I more so was looking at organizations that were helping startups and they would post stuff, right? They would post stuff. Okay. So I want to introduce you guys to this woman named Dawn because you should know who she is. Hold on, let me find the tab. I got too many tabs open. Okay, so this, let me make it smaller. Oh, wrong way. Oh my gosh, my computer's freaking out. Okay, this is an article about Dawn. Dawn is a really awesome pioneer as an entrepreneur because she is the first woman, actually, to raise over $2 million in crowdfunding capital. Let me explain what that means. me explain what that means. She's the first woman to raise over $2 million in crowdfunding capital. So here's how investing has worked in the past. And then let me tell you how investing works now. And this literally just happened. Like literally 2 weeks ago, they just changed the law. So you guys are like right on the cusp of learning this, right? So some people have invested in Popcom, so you know about this. Amazing. Perfect. Let me catch everybody up if for those of you who don't know about crowdfunding. All right. So in the past, what used to happen is the government said, how do I explain this? Okay. If you have a friend and all they had was $10 in their bank account, you probably would not advise that friend to put their money in the stock market, all $10 in the stock market, right? You probably would tell them not to do that. Why? Because if they lose that $10, they're broke, right? They don't have enough money to be investing. If you only have $10, don't invest it. Hold on to it, right? Save it, right? So the government has a similar thought process about investing in companies. And I don't mean companies on the stock market. I mean the next greatest Facebook, right? Mark says there's no guarantee of return, right? So if you only got $10, that maybe is not the best thing to do. Now, if you have a couple $100, maybe that's okay. You have a couple $1,000, maybe that's all right, right? Because you know that you may not get the money back, but it's okay because you're going to take a little bit of a risk and hope that you get a return, right? Now, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about now? Well, the government says something similar. They say if you are not a wealthy person, you should not be investing in the next greatest Facebook, right? Because the next greatest Facebook may not work. And if you lose your money, then you're going to be pissed off, right? You'll be mad. So what the government says is, if you want to invest in the next great, George says Facebook is awful. You guys know what I mean. The next great startup. If you want to invest in a company, it's not on the stock market, it's a small investment, right? Or a smaller company. If you want to invest in a smaller company, you have to be what they call an accredited investor. And what that means is you have to have $1 million of net worth. So if there are any of us on this call who do not have $1 million of net worth, that means that you cannot invest in startups. Did you know that? Anyone know that? If you don't have $1 million in net worth, you can't invest in startups. You can invest in the stock market, but those aren't startups. You can't invest in the next great startup. You have to have $1 million to do that. That's the first thing you should understand about how things used to be. George says $1 million is a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of people who felt like that was not fair, right? It wasn't fair. What that means is that the rich just keep getting richer, but for the rest of us, we can't invest in startups, right? So people felt like that's not fair, right? Someone said I had no idea. Yeah. Lamont says I'm checking my wallet. Yeah. So this is how it used to be, right? You, your friends, your families, you can't invest in startups, right? Now, something has changed though, because people were mad about that. They were like, that's not fair, right? That's not fair. So what happened is the laws changed relatively recently. A few years ago, the laws changed. And what the law changed to is that they said, okay, fine. We hear that you're saying it's not fair. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to let startups raise up to $1 million. No more than $1 million, but you can raise up to $1 million from anybody, from the people. Meaning that if someone doesn't have $1 million, they can still invest, right? Now, how does that change the game for entrepreneurs like you and I? How does that change it? Well, what it means is before, if only people who made $1 million could invest, and you don't know a lot of people who have $1 million, well, you're out of luck. But I bet you know people A lot of us know people who maybe could invest $5, $10, $20, maybe $100, maybe even $1,000. We know people in our lives, maybe not a lot, but you know some people who could do that, right? Who could help, who could pitch in to help you, right? So what happens now is anyone can invest, and they actually just changed it to be like 2 weeks ago, this changed. It used to be, it could be $1 million, and now you can raise $5 million, right? So now it's allowing the people to be investors, right? JB says now there are more investors. Yes, right? This has really changed the game. Now I'm telling you about this now because these laws are literally just changing, right? Just changing. And a lot of you might be going, wait a minute, okay, I don't know that I know anyone that could invest, right? Who would I talk to? But I bet that if you went through your LinkedIn, you went through your emails, you went through people that you know in your family, some people could contribute $20 here, $100 here, right? If you pitched it to me, right? If you pitched it to other people in this room, in this chat, and asked them to pitch in and be investors, right? So this completely opens things up. And this is the thing I would have done that just when I was starting, it was illegal. You couldn't even do it. And now it is legal. Now you can raise from just the people, right? So this really, Trishelle says this new law creates sort of a level playing field for people. Yeah, it really sort of makes it more easy for people to maybe aren't wealthy, right, to invest. Okay. All right. So does that make sense? I'm going to pause here and see if that makes sense to you guys. Do you guys understand what I'm saying about this new option that's now available? Now, Dawn has really been a pioneer in this. And that's why I was telling you, you should know who she is, right? Because Michelle says it's almost like a GoFundMe. Yeah, it's a lot like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter, except for investments, right? Which means that people are more willing to do it if they're going to get something in return, right? Yeah. So this is a huge game changer. And I want to show you guys more about how you do this, right? Now, there are a bunch of platforms you can use. Just like, you know, there's Kickstarter, there's Indiegogo, there's those sorts of sites, right? But if you want to do it sort of the more professional way with investing, then you've got platforms like Start Engine, for example, that allow you to do this. T has a question, is there a legal difference between a startup and a small business? How does that law only apply to startups? No, it applies to small businesses as well. So if there's a restaurant on your street and you want to be an investor of that restaurant, you must have $1 million net worth, or before. You had to have $1 million net worth. It was the same for small businesses or startups. They're really the same in the eyes of the government. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. All right. So this is what we call equity crowdfunding. Equity crowdfunding. Write that down. Equity crowdfunding. Okay. Now, what I have done is I've put together, like if you're interested in this and you want to know more details about this, right? For those of you who are like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking about these options for funding. What I have done is I've put together a really awesome masterclass. I mentioned this is part 1. I just want to introduce you to the topics today. Part 2, we're going to dig deep into all of the details about this and how you actually implement this for yourself to get money and funding for your business. Now, what I've done is I've invited a bunch of people to help us talk about all of this. Right? To hear about what they did. And specifically, Dawn has agreed to come talk to us and to show us all the details of what she did to get, she's actually working on her 3 million now. Now, some people said in the chat that they were investors of Dawn. Anyone in here invest in Dawn's company? Has anyone invested in Dawn's company or invested in another company? Right, a couple years ago, you weren't allowed to, but now it's possible. I saw someone in the chat do this. Cool. Yes. Awesome. Okay, so For those of you who want to get like all the details, because my goal today was to show you what is possible, my goal for part 2 is to show you how exactly to do it. Does that make sense? So I wanted to show you what you could do so that you weren't going into this like, wait, what are you even talking about, Tara? I'll show you what to do. And then the next step is how. Okay, is it Edward? Am I saying your name right? Edward? And Steven says, I've invested in 2 companies. Nadia said I invested in another company. Yeah, so literally, here you guys go. There are investors in here, in this room now, who now can be investors in companies, right? Yeah, I saw her on Breakfast Club and it was an interesting concept, so I invested, right? Now you can be an investor. Now you can get regular people, everyday people to invest in you, right? This was not possible before, right? It is now possible, was not possible before. All right, so here's what I want to do. Somebody was asking, when is the class? When is the class? So this master class with Dawn, and I'm going to give you the link in a second. The master class with Dawn is on December 10th. December 10th. And it's at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, right, with Dawn. Okay? Now, I'll give you a link right now to get signed up for the class. That masterclass is $97. And we're going to go into detail about how exactly to set this up for your business so that you can get funding. All right? You can get your investor. So to do this, I'm going to put the link into the chat for you. But the best way to get signed up, and I'll give you a second to get signed up right now, is fundmynewidea.com. Go to fundmynewidea.com and get signed up. Mark says, that's my 27th wedding anniversary. Oh, I love it. We'll get you some money on your 27th wedding anniversary. Cool. So I'll give you a second. Go get signed up. I wanted to make it accessible to you guys, but also I had to put, since Dawn's coming, we gotta show out, because she's gonna go through in detail how exactly she did this. And she's just like a wealth of knowledge, and she's agreed to come talk to us about all the details. So go to fundmynewidea.com. Take a second and go there right now. The website's gonna look like this. Where is it? Right here. And you want to go save your spot and get signed up right now. I'll give you a second to do it. And as you're getting signed up, I'm going to answer questions, because again, this session was about what is possible for you to do. The second part of this session is about how exactly to implement this, particularly if you want to do the crowdfunding piece. Tracy says, thank you so much for your knowledge. Yeah, of course. This is like one of my New Year's resolutions, is to bring you guys like new things to learn. Okay, so what questions do you have for me? What questions do you have? Suzanne says, does this funding apply to visual artists too? Yes, it does. You're going to need to have a company though. You need to establish a company, right? So you can get funding for anything, but you need to establish a company and have a clear outline of how you will make money, Cool. Okay, does it affect your ability to get investors if someone started building a similar app that you're trying to pitch? No way. It does not affect it at all, right? It does not affect it. In fact, it helps, because if you walk in and you talk to an investor and you tell them no one else in the world exists doing anything like what we're doing, they will look at you like you were crazy. That is like the most rookie thing you can say. Of course, someone else is doing something related, right? Of course, someone's doing something related. So it's actually good if there's someone else doing something that you can compare it to. That's good. Charles says, investors have power to direct you and your app. Like, can they tell you what to do? Is that your question? Can they tell you what to do? Okay. It depends on how much they own. So if you want to make sure that you hold on to at least 51% of your company. If you own at least 51% of your company, then you own the majority and you get to call all the shots, right? If you are doing crowdfunding, no, they don't get to tell you what to do. Like, for example, the people who are in the chat who invested in Dawn's company, they don't necessarily get to tell Dawn what to do, but she does have the responsibility to keep them in the loop of what's going on. Yeah, great question. Diane says, how exactly do investors benefit? Ooh, that's a great question. Great question. And as you're going to fundmynewidea.com, I will answer that for you. So here's how this works. And this is the same with crowdfunding or with traditional investors. Investors make their money back when you sell the company or when you go public. When you sell or when you go public, right? So when you sell the company to another company, right, you get a big check, and some of that check goes to your investors to pay them back, right, plus some, right? So when you sell or when you go public. Cool. Okay, other questions. Trina says, does Dawn decide the payout? The payout gets determined based on how much she can sell her company for, or if she usually it's selling, or if she goes public, how much she goes public for. There was a question. May says, okay, so we definitely can't go out there with just an app. We have to have a company, an idea for a company. Yeah, think about it. Would you invest in just an idea, just an app idea, or would you want to see that they've thought through the company fundamentals? You would, if you were investing, you would want to see that they've thought through the company fundamentals, right? Cool. So if you go to fundmynewidea.com, you will arrive at a page like this. Looks like this. And you can get signed up for the masterclass that's coming up with Dawn on how to get investors to fund your business idea. She's going to walk through exactly what she's done, right? What websites you can use to post your idea on that website to get funding. What do you have to have prepared even? Like, what do you need to organize, right, first to get that money? What do you need to have written out? What do you need to be able to answer? Right, we'll go over all of that. Okay, what were your company thoughts when you went for Collecto? So I'm not sure I understand what you mean by my company thoughts, but my plan for the business was to scale up number of customers, and I sort of had projected out, this is what we're gonna do in Dawn's session, by the way, projected out how many customers I need over time to really grow the business. Right? So someone says, do you need a formal business plan, or is that old school? It is and it isn't. Like, the people call business plans new things now. Like, if you Google business model canvas, and we'll talk more about this in the next session, right? If you Google business model canvas, you will be able to see like a new format for doing your business model. So you have to have thought through stuff. Right? And so what we're going to be talking about in this masterclass, if you go to fundmynewidea.com, you get signed up for it, we're going to be talking about in that masterclass is, what do you need to have prepared? Right? What do you need to have prepared? Mark says, how do you build your company to scale? I think you want to be thinking about how many customers you need to get to X amount of dollars. And you can set whatever goal you want, right? You set whatever goal you want. So that is, I think, the best thing for you to be doing is to come up with a goal and then back into how many years do you need to get there. That's sort of how you're thinking about scale, right? You're backing into a number. Cool. Okay. Other questions. Can you recommend some sites for grants? I do not recommend that you apply to traditional grants. I mainly recommend that you do pitch competitions where they give you grant money, right? And to do that, I recommend that you go to google.com and type in pitch competition and then the name of your city, period. Someone says the link's not working for me. Let me give you an alternative link if that's not working for you. Is the link working for other folks? Let me know if the link's not working for you. I have so many tabs open. Okay, try this if it's not working for you. I'll give you an alternative link. Okay. Other questions. There was a question about what if I pitch my idea to someone or I talk about it, like um what if someone takes my idea, right? People are not really that worried about you. Like, this is something I had to learn as an entrepreneur because I was like, oh my gosh, what are people going to say? What are they going to think? Are they going to copy my idea? And like, actually, they're not paying that much attention, right? And even if they did pay attention and try to do your idea, there is already somebody out there doing something similar. Like right now in this moment, someone else is doing something similar to what you want to do already. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. That means that you know that there's a market for what you're doing. Right? Is there a market? There's a market. Cool. Rick has a question. Is there a masterclass? Is the masterclass one time or is there follow-on support too? Good question, Rick. For this masterclass, it's going to be a mainly one time, but we're going to have a Facebook group for follow-on support. Cool. Are companies that investors look to invest in built to scale? Yes. So if you're going to go after traditional investors, traditional like company investors, they want to see that your company can be a huge company and you can sell it, right? Because that's the only way they get their money back. But if you do some of the other ways, you do pitch competitions or you do crowdfunding, then people have less need for such a big, huge return, if that makes sense. If you're trying to create an app, do you need the whole business carved out? Not right now in this moment, but you are going to need to know some answers to some basic questions. And we're going to be going through that in the masterclass, what the questions are that you need to know. Cool. Does this apply to other business like clothing lines? Yes, absolutely. It totally does. Some of the differences, there's some small differences in like what type of competitions you do or what type of investors you get. But the crowdfunding, for example, can work totally well for a clothing line or any other kind of business. Okay, if the link didn't work for you, let me give you an alternate link right here. I just posted that into the chat. Okay, and I see a bunch of people just got in. LaTanya just got signed up. Summer just got signed up. Michael just got signed up. Perfect. Super Kib just got signed up. Brandy said it's working. I got in. Okay, perfect. Samantha said I got in. Rick got in. Okay, perfect. Good. I'll give you a second to get in there. Perfect. It's working. Okay, good. Okay. Someone says, do you have Cyber Monday deals for your Apps Without Code course? No, we actually did not do a Cyber Monday deal for Apps Without Code. Instead, I wanted to offer this to you guys. And then there was a question about what exactly is going to happen in the masterclass with Dawn. Like, what are we getting? You're going to get a really intense workshop like this. I'm going to sort of interview Dawn and I'm going to ask you in advance what questions and things you want to know. But Dawn's going to walk us through her exact process for getting crowdfunding, getting the community to be an investor in her and how she's raised $3 million. So that's going to give you the exact blueprint so that if you want to do this for yourself, you've got all exactly the steps of what to do. Well, some other questions. Okay. Okay, I see lots of I signed up. I just got in. Yeah, let me know once you get in. Once you get signed up, let me know in the chat. Would you need any special tools or apps for crowdfunding? Trina says. The only thing you're going to need is you're going to need a crowdfunding platform. And we're going to go through what the best crowdfunding platforms are. They each have different criteria for if they accept you. And so Dawn's going to talk us through the different platforms, and then you can decide which platform is a good fit for you. So for example, some of the crowdfunding platforms require you to have a certain amount of revenue. Some of them don't require you to have any revenue. So we'll go through the pros and cons of each so that you can decide. And then Dawn's going to tell us which one's her personal favorite one too. Cool. Okay. Other questions. Okay, there's a question. Are you looking to become an investor with startups? If so, what would be the criteria to get you to invest? It's a good question. I think that I've been thinking about this a little bit. I think that I probably would do more of acquisitions, more like private equity and buy companies and help them scale up as opposed to invest in. And then would probably be looking at companies that are doing at least $10,000 to $20,000 a month in revenue. That's where it would be interesting to me. What are the advantages of selling your business versus going public? Why would you choose to sell versus going public? Good question. Most companies these days don't go public. If you were big, huge like Uber, maybe you'll go public, but most companies will sell. You will not have the opportunity to go public. You won't be that big. You likely will sell to another company. That is the path that most people take. Right. So that's usually how it'll play out. If you want to go through all of the public scrutiny of the whole world being in all of your financials and all of your business, but and you want a higher payout, then maybe going public would make sense. But these days, most companies don't go public. They usually get bought at the end. Or you decide that it's going to be your lifestyle business and you pass it on to your kids and you never sell it. That's also an option. Right. Cool. Okay. Other questions. I just dropped the link again. Let me know if you were able to get in. And let's see, did I miss questions? What questions? Catherine says, can we ask Dawn what spaces she thinks are hot for investors? Yes, I will definitely ask her that when we do our masterclass. I'll ask you again because you can send me questions that you want Dawn to answer. Cool. Are you still doing separate Apps Without Code boot camps? Yes, I am. I do still run Apps Without Code boot camp. I don't have enrollment open right now, but I think in January-ish we'll open up again. I will get back to you on that with an exact date. Okay, other questions. If I skipped your question too, by the way, I did not intend to. Okay, other questions. Will there be a recording? Yes, there will be a recording. Cool. Okay. How do you talk about revenue if you don't have any at a pitch competition? Great question. There's two things to do. One, go get some customers, right? Like go get some customers first. But the other way to do it is to just talk about other wins that you have had. Like another win might be that you have a background in the industry. Or another win is that you've talked to some people and they said that they were interested. So you can outline what your wins have been thus far. Okay. Angela says, is crowdfunding what you gave 7% away? And if so, how many people to give you 7%? So Angela, when I was starting, crowdfunding wasn't an option like this. So I never did crowdfunding myself, which is why I'm going to bring Dawn in for our masterclass to show you how she did crowdfunding, because I did the other two strategies, but crowdfunding wasn't even available to me. So I did it with just that 7% was one investor. Okay. Cool. Okay, yeah. And then Mark says, is a great point. Go watch Shark Tank. Like your homework tonight is to go watch Shark Tank, because even if you're not going to do the pitch competition route, you still need to know how to answer questions about your business and talk about your idea. Even if you're just starting, you need to be able to answer questions. So Shark Tank is a really good way to go learn what they might ask you. And then someone says, why did you give away 7%? Because I wanted the $100,000 that they gave me. So they took the $100,000 and I gave up 7%. If I were doing it again, I would not do it that way again, which is why I'm showing you guys that was a traditional investor route, an accelerator. So that's why I wanted to show you guys the other routes. Okay, cool. Instead of participating in pitch competitions, would it be possible to get information about how to write proposals for the Small Business Administration? Yeah, it can, yeah. So you can do a written pitch. A pitch can be spoken or it can be written. Remember, I told you my first one, I just wrote the answers to questions for my first one, right? If you were a better writer, that might be the way to go, right? The SBA is going to give you a loan, and that's fine, but you got to pay it back. If you want other kinds of money, maybe free money, or you want like small micro investors like crowdfunding, where you don't have to pay that back, it's different. Right. JB says, did you also have to pay the $100,000 back? No. So if it was equity. So I gave, instead of me having to pay them back, which would be a loan, I gave them the 7%. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to wrap up here. I just want to make sure that everybody was able to get in. Just confirm for me. Let me know if you were able to get in on fundmynewidea.com, or I'll give you the alternate link. Let me know. Let me know if you were able to get into the masterclass, and I will see you there. Let me know. Let me know. Yeah, 7% was equity. Cool. What's the difference between getting investors to fund your idea and white labeling? White labeling is for customers and getting customers to give you money. Investors is not for customers. They may not be a customer, but they want to have a little bit of ownership of your company to help you go. Okay, awesome. So Nick says, were you ever tempted to sell your company once you started generating funding? No, I haven't been tempted to sell my company until like somewhat recently. I've thought about it, but I'm not ready yet. Cool. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. I see lots of you guys got in. Noelle's registered and in. Michelle is in. I see you guys. Awesome. Awesome. Kim's in. I'll see you on December 10th. That's right. Perfect. And I'll send you guys all the links and information you need to get in. Perfect. Okay. All right. If you missed any of this class, if you stay here for a minute, it'll turn into the recording. So give it a second and the recording will post. But I'm super excited to start sharing some new things with you guys and to see you guys in the Funding My New Idea class on the 10th. All right. Okay. Kimberly's in. I see you. Steven says, have people offered to buy your company? Yeah, actually. They have. Awesome. Okay, cool. I will see you guys soon, and I will talk to you very shortly. Bye.